Like to call to order the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency special meeting, March 25th, 6:07 PM. Madam, roll call.
Commissioner Lawson,
Here.
Commissioner Lanier,
Here.
Commissioner McCoy,
Here.
Vice Chair Botel,
Here.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Present.
Also present, Mayor Ronnie Felder, Scott Evans, Interim Executive Director, Michael Haygood, General Counsel, and Tamara Sagan, CRA Clerk.
All right. I do want to say something before we go in. Well, we can go ahead and do a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mayor Felder.
I pledge allegiance
Liberty and justice for
Before we get started and move forward, we do have two of our council members that are on the phone, as well as our legal. Mr. Haygood is on the phone. So, Mr. Haygood, could you please just put on record the reason, or not really the reason, but how we're able to allow the members to be on the phone and also vote during this time while they're on the phone?
Yes, ma'am. Governor DeSantis issued executive order number 20-69 as a result of the pandemic, which supersedes the requirement of a quorum be present for local governments as far as holding a meeting and allowing participants to vote. Prior to that ruling, you could two things could be done. Number one, you couldn't have a quorum made up of individuals who were not there, and number two, you had to have a quote medical reason for not showing. This was all changed because of the virus pandemic, and so now you are able to have meetings telephonically and, in fact, vote on issues telephonically.
Okay. Any disclosures by commission and staff? We have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
I would
McCoy,
like to pull items from the
hold on.
agenda.
Hold on.
Sorry,
Hotel.
hotel.
Hold on a minute, Mr. McCoy, and then you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I wanted, before we adopt, to do,
Pull your microphone down.
if it pleases the board, I wanted to do some deletions and also one substitution on the agenda.
What do you mean? So I don't think you can substitute during the special meeting.
Well, not
You can
necessarily
delete.
substitute, but I wanted to kind of change the nature of the presentation by APD, Tesral, to have a commission and staff discussion as opposed to a presentation. I mean, nonetheless, it's about the Marina
Okay.
Village Phase 2 project.
Mr. Haygood, is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. I think the subject matter was generally covered in the item as published.
Okay. All right, Mr. McCoy?
Madam Chair, I offer to delete items number 3, 4, 6, and 7. And number 9, I would instead, as I mentioned, like to have
I can hardly hear.
Okay, well, Ms. Lanier, what you will probably have to do is you have to listen on your own television or from your phone.
No, I tried that, but it's lagging about
It's-
1 minute.
That will be
Because it's,
the case.
Sorry?
That'll be the case, but you have to not listen on your phone. You'll just talk through your phone, but listen through the television or your computer.
right, and I can hear you very well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
She's
McCoy
closer
that
to
we
the
can't hear.
phone.
It's
Because I'm
McCoy.
closer to the
phone.
device that's sitting here with the conference call. So unfortunately, that's what happens on the phone. I mean, I've dealt with that many a times, but that's kind of what happens. And that's one of the reasons why we have to get this telephonic situation a little more defined, because It is not the most ideal way in which we do this meeting. I can attest to that. So a lot of times when I'm on the phone, this is actually more clear than it's been in the past. But a lot of times you can't, there's a little delay sometimes. So we're just gonna have to do as best we can here because we can't do anything different with it. All right.
I'm saying there's no delay. There's no delay on the phone. The delay is online.
Madam Chair?
It's gonna be that way.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think the problem is she can't hear me because the speakers that we hear now is not projecting into the microphone on that
But it didn't
telephone.
last time either. It
So I don't think she.
I hear you.
I hear you now, fine. I hear you now.
Okay,
So,
we're gonna have
you
to
know-
move on. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I can go back, Madam Chair, I wanted to offer that we delete items number 3, 4, 6, and 7. And number 9, I wanted to not have a presentation, but a staff and Board of Commissioners discussion regarding number 9 on an update.
All right, and I did have this item number 8, discussion of construction contract for CRA beautification project. I can put that off to the next meeting in order to save time here tonight.
Madam Chair?
Botel?
I would like to delete items 9 and 10 as well, on the basis of the fact that the only imminent things we have to discuss tonight and vote on tonight would be items 5 and 11 regarding the IT contract.
Well, let's all
Madam
remember,
Chair.
this is a special meeting, and so
It was called for that sole purpose.
it was called for this purpose. Now, we have not adopted the agenda yet.
Well, then I'm not going to vote on the agenda.
Okay, we're not there yet, so we'll get there in
Okay.
a minute. So I pulled my number 8 off because that was the one that I put on there. So that was one that I did have on the original agenda. But the special agenda meeting items were put on by Mr. McCoy. And so, are you done with what you want to
Done.
pull off from the meeting that you
I
said?
want to.
We have to do the Madam Chair because we can't have everybody just talking at one time, okay?
Madam Chair,
Uh-huh.
I would like to pull number 11, delete number 11 from the agenda.
Is that your item?
No, it's not my item. It's the same item that keeps coming back without the proper information.
Which is the
Madam Chair.
computing one. Yes, Mr. Haygood.
This is one of the problems created when the agenda was adopted or was published as it was. You do have an item on here for adoption of the agenda. So I think that because the agenda was published that way, that you're going to have to follow the agenda, and there will have to be adoption of the agenda.
Well, because
Madam Chair.
hold on, Ms. Botel. Mr. Haygood, because he put the agenda
Yes, ma'am.
forth, I think we just need to either adopt it or don't adopt it. He's already said which ones he wanted to take off, being that this is what he put on. So, once we do disclosure by commission and staff, we can then move into whether or not to adopt or not adopt.
Okay.
Okay, so that's
Okay,
the end
no
of what
problem.
you
Or
said.
do as you would at a normal meeting, where I guess you're going to have to, if it's going to be multiple proposal as far as changing the agenda, I guess procedurally to make this make any sense. Here we go again. I guess we can get a motion. Don't you usually ask what
Madam
items you want? I'm sorry.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Haygood has the floor.
Yes. So I'm just trying to find procedurally some way that we can go through this, get an agenda, and move forward.
I think the way to do that, Mr. Haygood, is either adopt it or not adopt it.
Yes.
And that's
Well,
just the end. I mean, we either adopt it or you don't. And then if it gets passed, then you just vote to not vote for it, or and just move through it that way. All right, any disclosure by commission and staff? Can we have a motion to adopt the agenda? Mr. McCoy did pull off items number 3, 4, 6, 7, and I pulled off 8 because that was an item that I put on there, and it can be held off until the next time.
And I can pull off number 11?
Did you put it on there? Is that one that you put on?
For the last 4 meetings. Madam Chair, the wording at the top of the agenda says, there will be no separate discussions of these items unless a council person so requests, in which event the item will be removed.
That's only for consent. That's only for consent. The only items on consent is 1 and 2, which is the meetings and the vendor invoices. That only applies to 1 and 2, which is consent.
Madam Chair.
Hold on, Mr. Evans, hold on, Ms. Lanier, Mr. Evans wanted to say something regarding that item 11.
Oh, I was just saying that's related to item 5, and it was placed on the agenda by the special meeting request by Mr. McCoy.
You're talking about the 5 and 11.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And I was hoping that even if after Mr. Evans gives us an update on the IT agreement, you know, we can decide to delete it from the agenda then, but certainly he's in a position where they have to take some sort of action to continue IT services because we haven't gotten to the point of fully adopting item 11 that's been on the agenda that Commissioner Lanier has noted at least for 2 or 3 meetings now. So I wanted to have Mr. Scott Evans give us an update on where we are on the contract so that, you know, whether it be item number 5 or number 11 that we choose to take action on or no action at all, he still has to have something done because they're in a situation where they're in a holdover with the current contract.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Haygood and then Ms. Lanier.
I hate to confuse this even more. The proposed agenda by Commissioner McCoy had it on, I think it was taken off a table. It was a table item that was previously considered and was not voted to be taken off the table. It's my understanding of the parliamentary rules that item now has come back on as a new agenda item. Now, I know how specific you want to be, but on the proposed agenda from Mr. McCoy, it was listed as a tabled item. So
And which item is this?
I would suggest, this is number 11, I'm sorry.
So you're saying
everyone
number 11
understand?
was tabled?
Was tabled back in, I think,
November.
December or January.
November
It was
30th.
moved to be brought off the table at the next meeting, I guess, which was February, and the motion failed. It's my position that you now have to bring it back as a new item, which would have been fine, except that's not the agenda that Commissioner McCoy actually had approved for the special meeting. So what I would suggest is you just bring this item back on the next agenda whenever in April. And to answer Mr. McCoy's question or concern, I think item number 5 is to cover, and Scott, you can correct me, is to cover this period of time now that we don't have a contract.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, Mr. McCoy, what do you want to do? The 11?
Madam Chair?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Lanier.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. That was the reason that I had an issue with deleting number 11. I wanted to come off the agenda. Number 1, it was not supposed to be put back on until we vote to untable it, basically. And number 2, there was direction given to Mr. Evans in regards to getting with city administration about this contract, about what the city can do for IT services. None of that is a part of the backup. So, yes, pull number 11. Now, I understand that they do need a contract to be able to continue to operate, so I will look at number 5 to be discussed. But number 11 has to go because none of the information that has been requested for the last 3 meetings is attached to this backup.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, I didn't place number 11 on the agenda because we are working with the city IT. We're waiting for them to give us the pricing on the switch, but this agenda was approved by the board directly, not by me. So item 11, we are working on the requested backup from the previous meeting.
What do you mean it was approved by the board? When?
This agenda was a special meeting agenda developed by Mr. McCoy and approved by the board's vote to proceed with the special meeting. So to Commissioner Lanier's,
But what vote did we take to move forward with the meeting, a special meeting?
It wasn't a vote.
We
Madam
didn't
Chair,
vote.
This is Haygood. This is Haygood.
Go ahead.
The agenda, the procedure under your bylaws for a special meeting is that a member can request that the board, that a majority of the board approve both a meeting date and an agenda. The agenda that was proposed and approved by a majority of the commission had this item listed as an item that had been tabled. And again, it was incorrect because it already not been moved off the table, so it's going to have to be brought back as a new item. That's all. So in the next meeting in April, it'll be coming on as a new agenda item.
That's not true.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
Votel.
Well, hold on. Ms. Lanier, are you done?
Madam Chair?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not finished yet,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair. What I wanted to add was the fact that, I think we're getting all caught up in all of these items is because I assumed that the special meeting was supposed to be for the presentation. That was the reason why we were calling a special meeting. So when I saw this agenda with 11 items on it, this is a regular meeting. And so when I saw 2 items on the agenda, one is both of them for IT services, one for 60 days for a certain amount of money, another one is for an entire year. So all of this is very confusing. But I do know that number 11 does not have the backup that was requested by the board.
Right. And we heard you
So
on
that
that
is why
part.
I'm requesting that to be deleted.
Okay. Dr. Botel?
Thank you. I have a question. I guess it's of Mr. Evans. If we did not vote on this, if we voted not to accept this agenda, and therefore item number 5 were not voted on this evening, how detrimental would it be to the operations of your agency?
I'll let Mr. Haygood answer that, but right now the IT services has continued to provide us services since it's vital and critical, especially under light of COVID-19. So if that was the case, I'd have to let Mr. Haygood answer if we could continue to utilize their services until we can have a new meeting.
This gets real complicated because you're running into 2 issues here. Mr. Evans had continued to use the IT services under his authority, I think up to $25,000. I think, and you'll have to correct me, Mr. Evans, that amount has in fact been exceeded or he's about to exceed it. That's why he had to come back to you for any additional money.
All right. And
All right,
so-
a follow-up, please. A
I'm
follow-up.
sorry. Go ahead.
If we did not vote to approve this agenda, could we have a special meeting several days from now with that one item on it, item number 5 on it?
I'm not doing that.
You have the right, if in fact, either the board can tonight schedule a special meeting or I can use the bylaw procedures that we use to set this meeting.
Okay. So it would not be terribly detrimental to if, for example, I voted no on approving the agenda and other people joined me in that, then it would be not detrimental to the operation of the CRA to have a meeting on that one item only, item number 5, several days hence. That's a question.
Yeah, I understand. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know where Mr. Evans stands as far as payments to this vendor. I don't know if he's already exceeded.
Go,
Okay.
hold on. Are you?
So it would have to be a meeting several days hence to approve monthly vendor invoices and also to approve item number 5.
Yes, whatever you want, whatever you all decide
Okay.
that you want on your agenda for a special meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Are you finished, Ms. Botel?
I'm finished, thank you.
All right. Ms. Lanier?
Yeah, Madam Chair, we approved 3 months ago for a month-to-month with this firm anyway. So why are we having a discussion about this approving the month-to-month for this contract? It really could go into effect because we approved the month-to-month for this entity, but we did not approve for a 3-year contract at all. We didn't even get to that point. But we did say 3 months ago that we would go month to month until we get the contract figured out. So why this is a resolution, I'm not sure.
Madam Chair.
Again, as I just explained, the contract that was entered into when it was not approved by the board back during the fall
Madam Chair,
was
I
under
think you oughta get
Mr.
control because he's
Evans'
getting too into-
authority up to $25,000. I don't recall you all agreeing to a month.
Okay,
And it's not
Mr.
germane.
Haygood,
Correct.
Mr. Haygood.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yes,
Hold on, Ms. Lanier. Now, if we're going to start having all these conversations about it, we have to go ahead, and we haven't even adopted the agenda yet.
But-
And we're having a lot of discussion. So I'm thinking at this point, we either need to move forward or not move forward, because we're having a lot of discussion, and this is something that we can do during the meeting.
Madam Chair, can I offer a couple things?
let's call the question, Madam Chair.
What are we offering?
So, Madam Chair, so I was looking for our executive director, Mr. Scott Evans, to offer some insight. And
Certainly.
this is what the problem that we have. In fact, I actually met with Mr. Scott Evans when I developed the items to place on the agenda. And in talking to Mr. Evans as to what are the items that's a priority, when I got to number 5, and I inquired about number 5, Mr. Evans indicated, and in fact, when I came to Mr. Evans, he was actually meeting with Tony Pazzarelli, the IT director from the city of Riviera Beach, and what he was able to preliminarily gather from Mr. Pazzarelli, that there was not going to be any cost savings whatsoever to the to the CRA to go forward with migrating over to the city's platform. He also indicated that there was going to be a large capital cost for getting the CRA with the amount of equipment that it needs to migrate over to that system. So I put both items on the agenda so that we can continue to have the same discussion and that Mr. Evans can offer some insight to the commission to say, right now, we've already determined that it's not going to be any sort of cost savings.
Okay.
And that's why I wanted
Okay,
to
so
have both
that's-
options on the agenda.
Okay, so.
And Mr. Scott Evans can give you some insight as to what the preliminary findings were between him and Mr. Pazzarelli. And I don't think we can get to that point until we adopt the agenda.
And that's what I was going to say. You just explained why you put it on the agenda. We are now going, if we don't have any disclosures by commission and staff, we need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we go forward with that, and
Thought
I
you said you
understand
didn't wanna do anything.
I understand the concern with putting it on the agenda to have this discussion, but it was not put in the backup. And I think that's Councilwoman Lanier's issue, that the discussion that happened with Councilman McCoy and Mr. Evans was just a discussion between the two of them, and not having that information in the backup has every right for her not to have any interest in wanting to have this discussion tonight. So that would be my concern with having those agenda items discussed, because this is something that we have addressed and tried to get an answer for. And I did speak with Mr. Scott Evans as well about getting an update from IT, and he gave me those same answers, that there'd be a large capital amount. But because of everything that's going on with the city, because of the delays, whatever the reason or excuse that there's nothing in the backup, there's still nothing there for us to look at.
But
And
11 is still the same backup.
It's the
There's
same.
nothing new.
But that's the thing. We need something new. We're looking for the information from the city that would show the capital costs up front and the lack of savings from the city and the CRA when we switch IT.
And
But
you're
if we
talking
can mo-
about for the.
Number 11.
11.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. McCoy, are you okay with the 11? But what's going to happen, okay, so here's the thing. If we put this out to have another meeting or a special meeting, we already know what we're dealing with right now as to why we have some people that are calling in, we have some people that are here. I can only see it getting worse from going forward. And we already said that if we have any, we're going to postpone probably our future meetings until the city is able to come up with a way in which we can do it so that we're able to be by phone and video and get all of that stuff taken care of so we're good and in compliance with Sunshine. If this is something that needs to be addressed now, we need to address it. If not, it's gonna have to wait until maybe 2-3 weeks from now. So are we in a position to be able to wait the 2 or 3 weeks, or have you maxed out your authority, your spending authority?
We have maxed out our spending authority.
Okay, and so what happens from this point then? if
So
we don't
it's
talk
going to
about it?
have to be in a retroactive approval at any rate, whenever the board decides to hear it, since they didn't hear it at the last meeting.
Okay. All right, so everybody understand that, is that if we do not adopt the agenda tonight, we do not hear it, we will have to wait until we have another meeting, but in the meantime, he will be bringing something forward, probably at our next, whenever we have our next meeting, to pay them, to do a retroactive payment.
That's fine.
And,
That's fine with me too.
and Madam Chair, I think if we just get past this point, if any member has any reservation about any item, you can always, after we adopt the agenda, then offer a motion to table it. I just didn't want to exclude anything out of the gate. I wanted to have everybody to have the opportunity of what we seen last meeting, plus the 2 additional items that I offered. So if you want to offer to table something that's on the agenda after it's adopted, out of respect, just because of where we are, I want to respect whatever, each member has to offer. But I don't think we can even have the conversation until we have the conversation by adopting.
Right, all right, so do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
All right, we have a second?
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
No.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Botel,
No.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries with Commissioner Lanier and Vice Chair Botel dissenting.
All right, consent agenda, speakers, consent agenda, all matters listed under this item are considered to be routine, and action will be taken at one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a councilperson so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Do we have anyone that would like to remove an item from the consent? That's only numbers 1 and 2. All right, can we have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Botel,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All
Madam
right.
Chair,
Yes.
I move to delete items 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah, we talked about that at the beginning, 3, 4, 6, 7, and then 8 is off. All right, so item number 5, regular
Well,
business.
So when we adopted the agenda, did we adopt it in
Chair.
whole?
Yeah, no, we adopted it, we had already discussed that. The 3, 4, 6,
Madam
7,
Chair,
and 8.
I think we should go to a roll call
For what?
to delete those items.
Madam Chair.
Oh, you want to,
Roll call to delete items 3, 4, 6.
but when we adopted the agenda, that included, we had already discussed 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8 being removed.
But I think because we've had members to decide that they didn't want to adopt certain things, I think we need to go through piecemealing as opposed
But they
to.
already decided they didn't want to adopt the agenda. Their
No,
vote
I
is
don't-
done already.
Right. We don't have to do that.
No, they already agreed, they didn't adopt the agenda as is.
Right.
And we had already discussed 3,
Right.
4, 6, 7, and 8.
And they're already off.
Yeah, they're already on.
Right, right.
So
But
how is
Madam
it
Chair.
that,
They just voted no.
so, can you hear Commissioner Lanier?
Go ahead, Lanier.
But she wanted something else
Madam
deleted.
Chair,
I think it's all fair.
what about number 11?
See,
You
that's why,
you can move to have that removed.
so that's why.
But this is the thing. We voted to have, we can go through that now, once we get to 11. And that is exactly
Okay,
what you
that's fine.
said. We adopted the agenda, right?
Right, but Madam Chair.
Okay, that's
Beginning of
fine.
the agenda, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but I thought at the beginning of the agenda, you asked the council, do they want to delete, add, or substitute any items on the agenda?
So, Madam Chair, I
Madam
think the
Chair.
easiest.
Hold on. Hey, good?
Yes. Yes, I think for the record, you should now entertain motions from anybody who wants to remove or table an item. It's probably the proper motion be to table until a certain time.
Okay.
So,
All right, so,
I-
Ms. Lanier,
okay.
what is your motion?
No, Madam Chair.
I want to make a motion to remove item number 11 until the backup for this item is brought to the council.
All right, is
So we're
there,
going to table it. The motion will be to table it.
Table.
To table it until it gets, until the backup that's needed to make a decision on it is brought to the council.
all right, we have a second
Second.
discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
No.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Vice Chair Botel,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries to table item number 11 with Commissioner McCoy dissenting.
All right. Are there any others, or are we now going to only
Madam Chair.
discuss? Yes.
I would like to make a motion to table items 9 and 10.
I'm about ready to just say I'm going to not be here at this meeting in a minute because it's really kind of getting very convoluted. And I think if we had just voted to either have the meeting or not have the meeting, we wouldn't even have this discussion. This is very muddy. I'm sure nobody wants to be here tonight, nobody wants to participate, but we either need to have the meeting or not have the meeting so that we're not sitting here all night. It's 6:38, we're still voting to take things off and on. I'm okay one way or the other, but we need to be able to move this meeting along because it's not.
I'm
it's-
making a motion to table 9 and 10. Can we vote on that?
All right, do we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lawson,
No.
Commissioner McCoy,
No.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Vice Chair Botel, no,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
No.
Motion fails with Commissioner Lawson, McCoy, and Chair Miller Anderson dissenting.
All right, anything else? All right, hey, good, where are we now?
I think we are on item 5.
Item 5.
All right, item number 5.
A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approving and authorizing the execution of a modification of the professional services agreement for information technology services between Constant Computing LLC and the agency for a term of 60 days for an amount not to exceed $14,160, providing an effective date.
Do we have a motion?
So moved. So
Second.
moved.
Madam Chair, this item is an extension of the contract. When we looked back through the minutes of when the board originally tabled the contract with IT, the minutes show that there was discussion about going month to month, but that when it actually got voted on, the voting was just simply to table the item. Therefore, we enacted an administrative contract to continue our IT services while we worked with the city's IT department to come up with the cost comparison between the city and the CRA. The cost comparison, we're close to getting it done. The city's IT department has notified us that they believe the cost to maintain our services would be the same as what the private provider has offered, but the capital cost to switch our system over could be fairly substantial. And so we're working with them now to find out what that capital cost would be so that we can bring that back to the board as originally requested. And we have been meeting with them, and they have been very helpful in trying to get together the costs for that. So this item will extend the administrative contract for a term of 60 days so that we can complete that cost analysis that was requested by the board, I believe, in November, December, so that we can bring that back to a future meeting so you can make a decision on whether or not to make the switch to the city or continue with our private IT provider. But we do know that there will be no cost savings at that time. We just don't know the costs that it would take to make the switch yet for the capital. Thank you.
We don't have any public comments out there, right?
No, Madam Chair.
Discussion by the board,
Madam Chair.
go ahead.
Mr.
Mr. Lawson and then Ms. Lanier.
Mr. Evans, you said that there would be no cost savings as of right now, and that'll be completed within the next 60 days. Hopefully, we'll get a full report on what's the status. But you also say that there's going to be a capital improvement cost that we're going to have to pay to get all the systems up to date.
Yes, our systems would have to change from our software to the equipment we use to cut out spam and phishing emails. We basically have to get our system to match the city's, as well as update our servers and some of our computers. We need to migrate from the Microsoft Office software that's individual on desktops to the one that's hosted in the cloud. So there's a lot of different capital costs that we'd have to incur in order for us to be managed by the city's department. So we're just gathering all of those costs from computers, servers, software, and email monitoring.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
In addition to that, Mr. Evans, the issue that we had as a city with the cyber attack, was the CRA affected at the time?
No, we were not affected by the cyber attack.
And that's because we were on two separate systems.
Yes, if we had been connected, then we would have been included in that. And I think a cyber attack can happen to anyone, that we're not impervious, but by being separate, we were fortunate not to have been included.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Evans.
All right, Ms. Lanier?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this, but I do have an issue with the 60 days. I would like it to be 30 days because we are still waiting on this information. See, this thing keeps coming back to us every single month, and we need to get we need to put this to bed, which means that in 30 days, they need to have the information that we need to move forward with a full contract for whomever. So I would approve for 30 days, because the 60 days just pushes this thing out even further, and we're still not getting the information that we need to make a decision about this. I have been saying this for 3 meetings.
Commissioner Lanier, the only problem is, to be quite honest with you, I think the 6 days probably have expired. I mean, we now are probably out of...
Excuse me, sir. I'm still saying 30 days.
Okay. Mr. Evans, what were you saying?
Yes, I was just going to say that the CRA can't put together the costs for the city's IT department. So, of course, we're reliant upon the city's IT department, who've been very helpful, but, of course, they're dealing with a variety of issues on their side, so they've been trying to get us the total costs, and they did manage to get us the cost to maintain. They just haven't gotten the final capital. I would say that the 60 days would start, this agenda item was from the previous meeting, so that 60 days is already underway. So if the board changed it to 45 days, that would be not 45 days from today, that would be the same as 60 days from when it was originally created, which was 2 weeks ago. This will get us into the May, to our first meeting in May, which is when we would have we definitely would have all of the data that the CRA board requested, but we actually, within a few weeks, we are expecting to have it. So it's just a matter of when the next CRA board meeting will be, which that is what's really in question now, is when we're going to be able to have our next board meeting. So the 60 days just allows us enough time to get to the next board meeting whenever it's approved and completed by the city, the process for everyone to call in. So the 60 days just allows us enough time.
All right, Ms. Lanier?
Yeah, Madam Chair, now, we just came into this crisis about, a month ago. We've been having this discussion about this IT since the last meeting in November. So we made this decision in December to say, go to the city, find out about what they have in December now, find out what they have going on, what can we do to work with them so that we can lower our costs on this end, and still nothing was done. So we keep pushing this out. We need 30 days, and if they don't bring it back in 30 days, then we need to have some discussion about what's going on here.
Madam Chair.
Okay. You're finished, Ms. Lanier?
No, I'm not finished. And the thing about it is that the price alone is not the concern here. The concern here is that when we give a directive from the board to be able to bring something back to us, to be able to make a decision, because we do have a lot of things that we're working on, not just on this particular board, but when we give directives 3 months ago to bring back information in regards to making a decision, and we still have nothing, and we still keep extending it, then it's something wrong with this picture. So I say 30 days. When it comes back to the board in 30 days, and we can make a decision about how to move forward with this.
All right, Mr. Mayor?
Question. So the holdup is not the CRA, is it the city?
Yes, the CRA can't develop the costs for the city's IT department to manage us. Only the city's IT department can. So they've been working on that, and it has taken time. But there's nothing that CRA staff can do to come up with the cost that the
So
city.
if it's not on the CRA, if it's on the city, why don't we talk to city staff to find out what's going on and not the CRA?
And if I could add, I would anticipate, I believe the city council meeting has set for the third week in April is when they're planning to have the next meeting. So if we had our regular CRA board meeting on the fourth Wednesday in April, then by that time we would definitely have the costs. So I think
So that's 30 days?
that's about just a little, yeah, it's about 30 days from today, yes.
All right, Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Evans, I'm looking at the backup to this item, and I'm looking at the contract that's drafted. And there's a $39,000 cost, and I don't know which contract this is. Is this the one that's supposed to get us through? It says to extend the term to June 12th, 2020. This contract represents what exactly? Is this the modification of
This is
initial contract?
This is the it's a modification to the administrative contract. So when the new contract was not approved, we looked at the minutes, and there was discussion about going month to month, but that wasn't included in the vote to table. So when you tabled the item, we entered into administrative contract with the vendor to continue his services, the same as his previous contract, until we could bring back this item to the board. That spending authority for an administrative contract is $24,999. So when we exceeded that, we scheduled this to come back to the board because we still didn't have the costs from the city's IT department. So we brought this item back to extend the authority to continue to pay them, which I think was the board's original intent, which was to say go month to month until you could. But when we looked at the motion that was made at the previous meeting, the motion was simply to table the item. So this is just extending the administrative contract. It could be until the fourth Wednesday in April. That would give us enough time if you want to amend it to the.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
what minutes is he referring to?
Say that again?
What minutes is he referring to?
This is when the original contract was reviewed by the board. There was discussion about going month to month, but then the action was to table it, which changes
I'm
it.
asking you what minutes, what date those minutes are.
November 30th,
Andre,
I
when was
believe.
that contract?
I believe it was November 30th meeting.
Okay, November 30th.
Okay, November 30th, okay. Now, also, Madam Chair, this is a procedural question to ask. A resident just texted me and asked me, is there a number that residents can call on for public comment?
No, not tonight. We have not set that up.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yes, there
Evans.
is no number, but we have, if they want to send an email in for public, now not for an item that's already open, but per our regular rules, you can submit a public comment before an item gets heard. So we have an email address that's published on our website that if someone wants to submit a comment, that we would read it into the agenda, just to try and accommodate our public who couldn't make it tonight.
But that should, I mean, we really should have announced that up at the beginning, and what is the email?
Out to the public.
Say that again?
He needs to read that email address out to the public.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is either, but that's what I'm saying, that with this whole setup that we have and we're not prepared to do this, that is why this has become very complicated. What is the email address and who's checking it?
Yes, Shirley Desir is checking it, and then she's also emailing me, which I've been monitoring it for all of our discussions. We haven't received any comment yet, and I will read it into the record, the email.
All right, while
What's
he's,
the email address?
say that again?
What is the email address?
He's looking it up. Give us a minute. We're gonna go on with this
Oh.
discussion while he looks
I'm
it
ready.
up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. McCoy.
It's
Okay, go ahead.
Desir, which is SDESIR at, and then it's the initials of the agency, which is rbcra.com.
Mr. McCoy?
DSAIR.
Yes.
No. Having to repeat.
Read the whole thing again, Mr. Evans.
Sure. Oops, I lost it. SDESIR at rbcra.com.
Okay, I'll give that to the resident. Also, Madam Chair, I'd like for Mr. Evans to send me a copy of those minutes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. McCoy?
Okay, so, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Scott Evans, if I can take you back to the contract that I was referring to, there seems to be some sort of typographical error in the first page of the contract. Section 1, the original contract is hereby amended to increase the contract fees by $6,400. However, the parentheses has a different amount. So I want you to take a look at that. But I guess
You see that?
if I'm understanding correctly,
This is Haygood. Let me pull it up.
it's really technical in nature, and I think it can be corrected. I just wanted to
Okay.
point it to your attention. But the other concern
Okay.
that I have, and I was going to ask a question, does the current contract that has expired, Mr. Scott Evans or Mr. Haygood, provide for holdover? Or is there any, I
No.
guess, any adverse position that we're in because of we're beyond the contract?
No, that's not a concept for contracts. It's a concept for leases.
Okay. My other question
Holding
is,
over, yeah.
well, Mr. Evans and Mr. Haygood, so being that
Yeah.
you guys bought us a resolution for 60 days, is that what Constant Computing is in agreement to, of doing a 60-day contract?
They have been very helpful in working with us to provide services as needed. They have expressed to us their desire that they have spent over $10,000 in applying through the RFP process, which they won, and were dismayed that the project was not approved, that the contract was not approved since they expended such great costs to apply. However, they have been very helpful in just working with us on a month-to-month basis to provide service.
Okay, what's the monthly cost, Mr. Evans? Is it the invoice that we see in the minutes? Is that the same regular cost every single month?
It varies by how much work we do. It's usually between $3,000 and $6,000 per month, not to exceed the total contract amount.
How many users, Mr. Evans? I guess how many users do we have in the CRA that I guess is served by terminals or computers that Constant Computing provides support for?
We provide support for about 14 different users at the Marina Event Center. We have servers there. We have servers at the CRA. We also have computers at the Clean and Safe office as well. So 14 main users between the CRA staff and the Clean and Safe staff and the Event Center. But then also we have the 3 locations which all have servers and connectivity.
I believe the amount is about 40, and that includes our laptops, any handheld devices, so he manages all of those.
So that's what I was actually going to get at. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. So they actually provide, I guess, help desk support as well as server maintenance as well?
Yes, sir.
So it's not just 14.
It's 14 users, but that includes cell phones and laptop computers and other devices.
Yeah, other devices.
And servers and that's the thing. Okay, so, and obviously the peripherals, do they do anything with the I guess the audio visual that's inside of the CRA offices, like the speakers and the,
No, but at the marina they do. They do manage.
so they actually maintain that specifically?
Yes.
Okay. The analysis, have you gotten to the point, Mr. Evans, and perhaps you may have to kind of refer to the CRA's asset disposition policy to determine what, if any, residual value exists with the current equipment that we have?
No, we have not. You mean the equipment that needs to be replaced?
If we go to a switch?
We have not determined the residual value, though. I do not, used computers are not, don't have that much value, and we have to spend a lot of money to clear all of the public or private sensitive information off it, which is another cost. So I don't think there would be a lot of residual value, but we can look at that when we bring it to you.
What is the, I guess, we're talking about moving over, but as it stands, was there a determination of what useful life was left in the current equipment?
Some of the equipment is due to be replaced. What we do is that we go piece by piece rather than replace it all at once. Some of the equipment, like several of
Chair.
the computers, likely would be replaced this
Mr.
year.
Evans, you said we do that. Is that something that the CRA does, or is that something that Constant Computing does? Do they control, when we cycle out the equipment?
They make recommendations, and then we proceed as long as it meets our budget.
Okay. But preliminarily, you've come up with, I guess, some position that this is not going to actually inure to any savings of the CRA. It would just integrate us into the current system with the significant capital costs.
The city's IT department has completed their analysis to say that the cost to maintain us would be the same as what our private provider has suggested.
Okay. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right, Mr. Lawson, did you have anything?
No, Madam Chair.
Ms. Botel, did you have anything?
No.
All right. All right, Ms.
Madam
Lanier,
Chair?
go ahead.
This is not regarding this issue, but let me state for the record, I want this to be a part of the record. I've had 4 residents try to call me during this meeting because they don't know how to put public comment in because they can't leave their house. Now, I just sent them a copy of this email address, but I'm very, very uncomfortable in this position, in this meeting, when we don't have any access. Well, we do now that I got the email address from Mr. Evans, but I'm still very uncomfortable with this not being set up already for residents who can't leave their home to be able to make public comment. I just want to state that for the record.
Right, and I agree with you on a few different levels, but we do have it now up on the screen for the television. Mr. McCoy, were you saying something? No, okay. Dr. Botel, were you saying something?
No.
All right, Madam Clerk, item number 5.
So, ma'am, are we voting as presented?
Nobody has put forth another motion. I haven't heard another motion. All right,
I'd
Commissioner,
like to put forth a motion then. I'd like to put forth the motion that this be 30 days instead of 60 days.
all right, is there a second?
I didn't hear what our motion was.
Say it again?
I'd like to put forth a motion that this time frame be 30 days instead of 60 days by Mr. Evans' own admission. It's about 30 days out that they would be able to get this information. So for 30 days until they can provide information about the contract as a whole.
Let me just, is this 30 days from today, Mr. Evans?
Yeah,
or
my
from-
comment was from today. This extends the contract from, I believe, from the meeting date. When was the last meeting? The March?
To go,
Yes,
the
so
11th?
we can do 30 days from today, so if that would be April 22nd.
Is there a second? Is there a second for making it 30 days? Dies from a lack of a second. All right, we're back to the original motion for the 60 days, not to exceed the 60 days, right? All right, Madam Clerk,
Commissioner Lawson?
We had a motion and second?
at the beginning.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier?
No.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Botel?
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries with Commissioner Lanier dissenting.
All right, item number 9.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to bring to your attention that the phone line is getting a bit shaky, so it's really hard to hear you guys, but I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay, and again, that is exactly why, I said at the very beginning, we have not set ourselves up quite yet to be able to function with this meeting like this. So that, unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. And a lot of times when we have people on the phone, which I have been a member of being on the phone quite frequently, the phone usually is not that great. So this one is actually much better than it has typically been. So hopefully in our next meeting, we will have all of this worked out. All right, item number 9.
Presentation by APD Tezrell RBMV2 LLC for development of the Phase 2 Marina Village project.
All right, Mr. Evans?
Yes, I'll just comment before Mr. McCoy. We did hear from the developer that he prefers to wait for the city and CRA to provide him feedback. So he's not here today, but that he's awaiting direction for us to begin our discussions related to negotiations.
All right, Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to have this opportunity, in light of what occurred last, I
Madam
guess.
Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Mr. Councilman McCoy, but this is not going to work. I cannot hear Mr. Evans. I can barely hear Mr. McCoy.
Can we reset?
This is not going to be able to work for us because we can't hear.
Yeah, I can't hear you
Mr.
now.
Okay, this is what we're going to do.
Very spotty.
Can you all hear
I
now?
can't.
Okay, listen.
No, I can't.
Listen, please. We are going to take maybe a 10-minute recess. A 10-minute recess.
We need to do a recess until we can get the phone straight.
now. We're on recess. We're back in session. All right, so is everyone able to hear? Dr. Botel, Ms. Lanier, and Mr. Haygood, are you all able to hear?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're on item number 9. We were discussing 9.
Yeah, we were getting to 9, Madam Chair, but I wanted to ask a question because I was not clear originally about what was going down with this.
With item number 9?
Yes, it says a presentation by Tesruel for development of Phase 2 Marina Village. So we're not having a presentation?
So at the beginning, when we were discussing the items, when Mr. McCoy was pulling them, I don't know if you could hear him, but he said this was going to be just a brief discussion with the staff, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. McCoy. Okay. So that's what 9 is.
Okay, so why are we, but it says presentation, so what, Mr. McCoy gonna present for them?
No, he's not doing a presentation. There will not
So
be
why
a
are we-
presentation.
So why are we having a discussion, Madam Chair, if this is just supposed to be for a presentation? A discussion about this particular item was not on the agenda.
Madam
We
Chair?
can't go back and change this now.
He discussed this at the very beginning when we were removing
But Madam
things off
Chair,
of the
it was
agenda.
not- my apologies, Madam Chair, but this was not advertised. A discussion of the marina. No. Hold on, let me finish. A discussion of the Marina Village project with staff and with the board was not advertised. What was advertised was a presentation by APD and Tesruel for the development of the Phase 2 Marina Village project. That was what was advertised. So whatever we're about to do now has not been advertised and the public has not been noticed.
All right. Mr. McCoy,
Madam Chair,
go ahead.
if I can be recognized, I would like to delete item number 9 if that appeases Commissioner Lanier.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Is there a second? Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Vice Chair Botel. Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 10.
Discussion and deliberations on the selection process and filling the Community Redevelopment Agency Executive Director position.
All right, Mr. Evans, Mr. McCoy?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Members and here in online, on the phone, and to staff, I actually bought this item for one of the major reasons. I wanted to find out, and I know Councilwoman Botel initially in the beginning of the meeting had objections to this item, but I wanted to ask the questions of the senior members of the board regarding the executive director position that we currently have Mr. Scott Evans filling. What was the desire of the CRA in filling this position on an interim basis, in that we have Mr. Scott Evans, who's been in this role for nearly 4 years, and I wanted to find out if you guys could provide me as well as the board some findings or backup information on performance evaluations and, you know, what we've done, you know, during the time prior to the new board members coming on.
All right. So that
Well,
question is,
I guess that's an open-ended question, but I did have some other ideas about us moving forward and filling the permanent position, but filling the position on a more permanent basis.
Madam Chair?
go ahead.
Yeah, I too have some concern about moving forward, because I mean, that's why I just kind of lost it about this Marina 2, this Phase 2 Marina Village project, is because this is a $200 million project, and there is no way that we should be operating with an interim director with this type of money at stake and this type of development for the city at stake. So yes, we do need to have a discussion about filling that position and about doing a nationwide search for a selection for this particular position.
All right. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I disagree at this point in time. I think this is not a good time for us to be changing horses, in midstream. If we decide that we're gonna go out for search, it's gonna cost thousands of dollars, and it's gonna take more time than we even wanna think about. We need to move forward as quickly as we can on this project, and Mr. Scott Evans is the person who knows more about this than any person we could bring in at this point in time. I think we've got to get this project going, get it off the ground, make it be successful, and then, at some point in the distant future, perhaps, look for a replacement or offer the job to Mr. Evans. But to go out now and start to look around and disrupt this process when it's moving along, I mean, we are making progress. I don't know if you had an opportunity to read the memo that went out regarding the dates, the accomplishments so far, but the process is moving forward. We have to get the financial advisor in place and working. We have to get communications advisors in place. We have to get development advisors in place. But those things take time, and I don't think, in my opinion, that we need to slow the process down by going out for a search for a director. I think that we can, well, that's what I have to say. I think it's not the time for change of leadership. It seems to me like every time a new council is elected, well, that's all I'll say for now.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Lawson?
I would have to disagree with Councilwoman Botel in regards to we're making progress in regards to the development of Phase 2, because I believe as of tomorrow, this would be 1 year that the new council has been elected, and we've seen no progress. We've just had a lot of discussion and talks about Phase 2. In regards to Mr. Evans' position, I think the decision needs to be made if we're taking off the interim tag and making him permanent, because as Mr. McCoy stated, we have had an interim director since 2016, I believe. And I think the first question was, what kind of updates or reports have we had in regards to reviews from Mr. Evans? What feedback can we give from our previous council in regards to the process and what he's accomplished since our previous council, Dr. Botel and Ms. Kashampa Miller-Anderson has had, or what reviews can we take a look at just to make a determination if we're going to go out for a national search or if we're going to take off that interim tag? Because right now, the only concern is right now we just have an interim director, and for him to continue to operate as an interim director is unfair to Mr. Evans and unfair to this board and unfair to these residents, so we have to make a decision for them.
All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just also want to add that I have just completed a evaluation for the city attorney. We've completed, in the process of completing evaluations for the city manager, and we have not even evaluated this position.
Well,
So at least, at the very least, we should be able to evaluate the position to see where we are.
All right. Mr. McCoy?
well, respectfully, I want to put this back to the chair and vice chair. And Councilwoman Lanier, that's the question that I proffered when I first started the discussion. If Pro Tem Botel or Chair Miller-Anderson can offer any information about any kind of performance evaluations for the time that they've been on the board and he's been operating as interim executive director, perhaps that can provide us some insight as to where we need to go today and it be pertinent to the conversation. However, I wanted to take the opportunity to also respond to Councilwoman Botel. The points that you made about the progress that we've made, I beg to differ and I vehemently disagree. I asked the members to consider us having an appointee to the joint work team. And, I'm glad you took the initiative and stepped up, but I guess the email that I received on the 18th is not exactly what I was expecting when I asked about an update. So that's why I wanted to have the Phase 2 discussion to ask you about some things that was pertinent to that. And I know we did delete that item off of the agenda, but I do have the opportunity to bring that back up through board member comments, which I do intend to do, because the report that was provided doesn't even merely answer the questions that I had, and I wanted to ask those questions in the presence of the other commissioners. So we'll see that in just a little bit, but I disagree that, we're in a position where we're moving forward, because I have constantly unanswered questions about where we are in this project. And also, I have some concerns about the CRA current operations. That's why I started the conversation by asking about performance evaluations. And surely, Vice Chair Botel, if you can attest that we're in a good position with Scott Evans, I'm sure you can offer us some accountability or some performance evaluations that's been conducted by you relative to Mr. Scott Evans' performance.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just think that at this point, because we are the board on 3 entities, that we evaluate the city manager, we evaluate the city attorney. I think that we should also be in a position to evaluate the CRA director and that legal counsel. Because what it is what we have here. We have an interim director for the CRA. We're moving into this whole arena and area of doing these huge projects. We are getting new people on board, and everybody, the taxpayers evaluate us. Everybody has an evaluation. So not to have an evaluation procedure in place for this particular entity is unheard of. We're supposed to be able to prove to our constituents that the people who are in these positions are doing a good job, and also that we have evaluated them based on that job. So what we have is we have a city attorney, we have an attorney for the CRA, and we have the interim CRA director who both need to be evaluated.
Well,
and however we do that, we can bring back some, just like the city attorney gave us about 3 choices to do evaluations. We need to do that first and foremost.
So let me just kind of answer your question, Mr. McCoy. No, we have not done any evaluations, and unfortunately, that's probably prior to Mr. Evans, Mr. Jonathan Evans coming. We weren't really doing a whole lot of evaluation, and that's kind of like, unfortunately, the norm at one point. So this particular agency has not done an evaluation either.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
the CRA director and attorney has never been evaluated?
Not since I've been on the board.
Well, that needs to change.
I agree.
well,
Go ahead. Mayor.
Madam Chair.
Mayor's first and then Botel.
Okay, so my question is, and I agree with Councilman Lawson and Councilman McCord, but you guys have been on the board for a year, right? And I don't think it's fair even to Mr. Evans. Like, why haven't it's been an evaluation? Now, what you 2 guys are saying from the previous 2 board members that's been here, is it anything that you guys can say that would help his cause or hurt his cause, but it needs to be done? Now, I wouldn't advise us making the move until we put an evaluation together for Mr. Evans, and you sit down and look at it, and then you make that decision. But whatever decision needs to be made, because we have so many interim positions, and I think this is what happens, is it's not fair because they sit in those positions for so long to where they come from council to council. One council say, don't do anything. So, they're in an awkward position. So to take these interim positions out, I think each one should have an evaluation, and then you guys determine, okay, we're going to stay with this person or we're going to move on. But they have been in some rough and been put in some rough situations. But I agree with the both. But I think before we make any decision, it should be something that you guys do an evaluation before you make that decision.
Mr.
Madam
McCoy?
Chair.
Mr.
Ma- I
McCoy?
was-
Huh?
Madam
McCoy?
Chair.
thank you, Madam Chair.
McCoy, Botel, and then Lanier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members, and also thank you, Mayor. I don't want us to start with the conversation of doing an evaluation at this point. I started off the conversation by asking the chairperson and also Chair Pro Tem if they can offer any evaluations. And then the chair acknowledged that they just haven't done it. And I wanted to know specifically from Chair Botel, Vice Chair Botel, if she has any kind of performance evaluations that she can share with the commission as to Scott Evans' performance. And I reserve for a follow-up, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I think you answered that sufficiently. I would say asked and answered.
I didn't hear what you said at the end. What did
I
you-
said asked and answered.
Asked and answered.
I agree with the mayor in that it's about time we did a performance evaluation. This was not part of the culture, may I say, prior to Mr. Jonathan Evans returning. Now it's becoming, fortunately, a part of the culture and something that we need to do, and we need to do it quickly. And before we make any move toward advertising a position or putting something out, we need to evaluate the current interim director, and we need to do that very swiftly. I would question Mr. McCoy as to what questions he has that have not been answered. When I say that the process is moving, I believe the process is moving as quickly as it can move. Remember, we had a lot of things that had to fall into place before we took any further steps with this.
Jermaine,
project.
Madam Chair, I just needed her to answer the one question.
Excuse me?
Go ahead, Botel.
We had a lot of things that had to be put into place, and those things were being put into place. January 8th, we approved the abandonment of 13th Street. January 22nd, we approved the purchase contract with Viking. January 30th, we had a conference call. I mean, these things have been happening. Now we have a financial advisor we can use. We also have to hire a communications advisor and a developer advisor. And these things take time. You know, it's easy to say, let's push this through, but these are important steps that have to be taken. Now, what were the questions that Mr. McCoy did not have answered? That's what I would like to know.
Okay, so,
Hold on,
wait a minute.
Hold on.
It's kind of gotten way, I just asked a simple question.
Okay, and so next
Your answer is no.
Ms. Lanier. Okay.
And I wanted to,
Lanier and then McCoy.
Okay. All right, Madam Chair, I think that we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here in terms of making this a whole big, long discussion, because this is just that, a discussion. But I do think, and I think that all the members would agree, that the team at the CRA, just like we evaluate everybody else that we sit on the board for, that they need to be evaluated. We have been in this position for an entire year. The city attorney has not been in that position for that long, but we are evaluating her.
Okay.
So we need to be in a position where we have, if we're going to prove to the public that we're doing our due diligence in terms of not just project, but staff behind the project, then we need to be able to be in a position to at least, I mean, you cannot argue with the fact that we need to at least evaluate them. It's ludicrous to think that we wouldn't even evaluate the people who are doing all of this work, good or bad.
Okay. I mean, I think that part for sure about the evaluation. I don't think anyone object to that part at all. Hold on, Botel. We have Mr. Lawson, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure how this discussion item got so contentious when we're just having a discussion about filling the permanent executive director position. We currently have an interim position, and we need a permanent director. That was our goal when we got elected a year ago, to make all of our positions permanent so that we could have a permanent staff to move forward with. So I agree that we need to do a review of Mr. Evans, who's currently in the interim position as of right now. But at the same time, what is that going to do?
Right.
What steps are we going to take next if we do this review and it comes back to say, okay, he's doing a phenomenal job, he's doing a subpar job, he's just on par with what other directors are doing? What is our next step? Because I think we need to determine, are we doing this review to make him the permanent director? Or are we going to be putting out for a search so that we can have applicants apply, allowing for Mr. Evans to apply? What steps are we taking as a board? And I think that's more of the discussion we need to have, because, yes, we all agree he needs to do a review. He can do a review in a week. We'll come back next month. What's our next step?
Right. I agree with that. Mr. McCoy?
thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I don't want anyone to get discouraged by the conversation. I think we have to have the vigorous discussion and debate these issues so that we can come up with a consensus. And, I certainly respect if you don't want it on the agenda, but I think it's important to not shy away from it, because I think these are circular arguments, and a lot of it picks back up on where we left off on phase 2. And again, I'll reserve that later. But here's where I have a problem with the interim director, and I thought Councilman Lawson was actually going there, but Mr. Scott Evans was not hired as interim executive director. He was appointed to that position. So what we're going to do, if you're suggesting to do a performance evaluation, is evaluate him on a position that's not even his permanent position. he still maintains a position in the CRA. Now, if there was a discussion about his regular position, then that's something different. But technically, it was never the intention of the body when they appointed him as interim to make this a position that he should be evaluated for. It was just, he was there as a placeholder. Now, certainly if you want to make an assessment of it, but I don't think it's fair to him or to the process to even do an evaluation at this point, because we've started the conversation of discussion and deliberation about seeking an executive director, but anything you do with the performance evaluation has absolutely no bearing on the hiring process. And I would expect, he served us, for nearly 4 years, that he's definitely going to be one of the first applicants to submit for the permanent position. But I definitely don't believe us doing an evaluation at this point is going to be useful to him or to us, because definitely for him and for us, and probably for the community, if it's a positive, excellent, the maximum evaluation that you can give an employee, does that then suggest that that's who we go with as our executive director, when, again, the original intent was not to hire him, was just to appoint him as a placeholder? That's why the title is there, interim. And to do an evaluation at this point, I think it'll be fruitless, and it would only lead, it would be misleading to where we're going at in the future.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
question. What position were you taken from?
The Planning and Development Director for
So
CRA.
here it goes. So if we go down the road, Councilman McCoy is saying, and we bring in another director, do we place him back into his regular position?
That's what his contract calls for.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I do want
Yes.
to point out, we have been receiving public comments. At
Okay.
some point, we should probably
And
close
which
or open
public
that.
comments is this? Are we talking about general public comments, or are we talking agenda item comments?
I have a public comment for this item, and the other one is probably, looks like regular general
Okay,
comment.
so go ahead with the public comment for this particular item, number 10. Make sure you state their name, just as they would coming up to the podium.
Close it.
Ms. Mary Bram. We need to move the CRA along with the same skill set and that professionalism. I agree that he should be evaluated. I agree that we should move on to find a permanent director that can guide us in the next phase when we do get up and start back running again, because right now everything is in limbo. It is never too late not to do anything. This is what it's happened to the city here, because we are always procrastinating, saying that it wasn't done like this. When you have a chance to make these corrections, this is the time to do it.
All right. All right, so we're we'll do after this item here, we'll go to the regular public comment. All right, but the item is closed for this particular, the acceptance of public comment is closed for this item, number 10.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have some reservations about this, in a sense that, number one, does Mr. Scott Evans have a contract?
No.
He does.
What kind of,
Okay,
the interim
so-
contract?
I'm sorry?
It's open-ended. It hasn't come to us, though, has it?
Right, it's an
Yeah.
open-ended contract.
Yeah, it's open-ended then.
Yes,
So he has a contract with the city,
with the CRA.
with the CRA. So he's not a CRA employee. He's a contract employee.
Well, he is an employee. He just has a contract. He's a
Just like the
salaried
city manager.
Okay, then we need to take a look at that contract. That's the first thing.
Okay.
The first thing is and when you say open-ended, what does that mean?
It didn't have a specific term. He's
So
been hired until he's
so it never expires. Is that what you're saying?
correct until you terminate. Correct.
Okay.
He
All right. So,
terminates.
I'm sorry?
Or he terminates. Either party can terminate. Yes.
If we are moving forward with this type of development, and I'm sure that developers are looking at the fact that we have an interim director. People don't want to get involved with situations where it's just interim. So we want people to come to the city and spend money. Then we need to have a permanent director, whoever that may be. It could be Scott. It could be anyone. We're just saying that we need to have a permanent director anyway. but I would definitely like to have a look at the contract that Mr. Evans has with the CRA. And also, I would like for this, for even the attorney to look at some type of evaluative measures for the position that he's held for the last 4 years. I mean, we need to have something to work with. If we're going to say that we're going to go out and find a director, we're going to still need to have some evaluation measures in place anyway for whomever we hire. So I need the city attorney to start working on that. And also, I need the board to be supplied with a copy of that contract that he currently has.
All right,
Madam
yes.
Chair, just to piggyback on Councilwoman Lanier, and I disagree with contractors don't want to come in because of an interim. I know 3 or 4 that wants to come in and be part of phase 2 development, and they're not looking at the CRA director, they're looking at this board. Is this board ready to move this city forward? So I think the board has some decisions to make, but these contractors are waiting on this board to move and make that decision.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, I understand perfectly, but the board has a right to its taxpayers, that the people who are representing us in those positions are, number one, permanent, and number two, we know we know what they can do based on evaluation criteria, and not because we like them. We have to evaluate people based on evaluative measures, outcomes. We can't just say because we like a certain person, then they should continue to have a job. That's just not how it works. And I also think that before I go any further with this, that this is something that needs to be workshopped. Because if we're going to move forward with hiring a permanent director, at some point we're going to have to. I mean, the mayor is the interim director. At some point, we need a permanent director, whether it be him or anybody. So because we have to go forward with this anyway, I think it should be workshopped so that we can have all the options and all the things on the table so that we can really discuss this that's in the best interest of the city.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And I'm not disagreeing with Councilwoman Lanier about whatever decision we make about our CRA director. I was just making a comment about developers are not wanting to come here because we have an interim. The conversation I have with them is your board ready to move forward? So yes, the board has to make a decision what you're going to do with the CRA director, but remember, people are looking at this board, and this board was voted in to move the city forward. So the onus is on.
Hold on, Ms. Lanier, hold on.
It's really on the board making those decisions that you're going to make, but is this board ready to move phase 2 in the city forward is what I'm getting from developers.
All right, Ms. Botel?
Thank you. Can I make a suggestion? It seems, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm just getting a lot of feedback, I'm sorry. Can I make a suggestion that we vote to appoint Scott Evans as permanent director, conduct an evaluation over the course of the next month, see how he fares? I mean, after all, you can make someone a permanent director, and then if he's not meeting your standards, meeting your requirements, then you can give him due process and terminate him. But at least we would have a permanent director and not an interim, and it would still give us the power and authority to terminate him if he was not meeting our expectations. So it would solve both the problem that we don't have a permanent director, and it would put us in a position where we would be practically forced, although I think we agree it's the right thing to do, but we would be forced to make this evaluation happen as quickly as possible.
All right, is there a second? Is there a second? All right, it dies for lack of a second. All right, anyone else have, Mr. McCoy, back to you?
So, I simply started a discussion just asking the chair and vice chair, and we've developed this kind of discussion into doing an evaluation. And again, it wouldn't be fair to Mr. Scott Evans if you evaluate him and give him something less than perfect for a position that we as a board, and I don't mean us as individuals, but as a CRA board, asked him to fill this role. So doing an evaluation will be fruitless because you're going to perhaps, you may impugn on his ability by saying, perhaps he could have improved in this area. But again, members, this was not what he was hired for. So I don't think that I want to even see that we even have the discussion at this point. My desire was to bring forth to you guys the conversation to move forward with discussing a process and to fill a position on a permanent basis. And not so much, I just wanted the evaluation for informational purposes, but certainly I don't want that to be, that thing. And, I can't disagree with you more. As much as I have the highest respect for you, Councilwoman Botel, we do not hire people at a meeting on the spur of the moment, because we've already seen how that happened.
Oh, but we
And
can fire them.
I beg your pardon?
No, never mind. I was being
But certainly, Mr. Evans has served, but, I don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction to make a decision when surely, we've now been here 1 year and you've had 2. And, this is something that I want to see if we can develop a process. And that's why I delineated in that fashion, that it wouldn't just be something that we just decide to, turn around and just hire tonight at this meeting. My desire was us to have the conversation on how we feel this position. And, I really would like to see some feedback. And I think I've heard some things, but I would like to see if we can, at least put out a search for an executive director and, give Mr. Scott Evans the opportunity to participate. And, I'm welcome to see how that works and what the members have to offer.
Madam Chair?
Hold on. So, Mr. McCoy, for this particular item, are you making a motion to do that, or are you saying that at another meeting you would like to have it on there to outline a process for doing so?
Well, I wanted to see what the members' feedback was, but this went into a conversation about evaluations. But, again, it's my desire that we fill the position, whether we come up with a process tonight, depending on what we hear from the members. But I definitely wanted to leave here, not in the same position that we've been in for the last year about where we're going with the CRA and some of the development projects that we're doing.
But if I'm not mistaken, I think we've kind of heard from everybody. Mr. Lawson agreed that we do need to fill it. Ms. Lanier agrees we need to fill it. And of course, by no means does any of this mean Mr. Evans is getting fired. This does not mean that if we go out for a search, he can't apply. If we go out for a search, he has a position to go back into. So it's not like he's being fired and being let go from the CRA. But this is about making the position permanent. Lanier basically agreed, and Botel didn't. So I'm fine with going out, and so that we can make this a permanent position. So I think it's pretty clear that we're all in at least a consensus of having the position become permanent and not remain an interim position. So if because we didn't expect to be here, I don't think none of us expected to be here this long. It's not going to be solved tonight, but I think for the purpose of it being on the agenda, having the conversation, this is something that we can put on for our next meeting to come up with that process. And in the meantime, we can have that discussion of what we want that to look like, at least provide some sort of, get some guidance from Mr. Haygood, or just consult a little more with our HR, or just get some information so that we can be prepared for the next meeting, if we so desire to put it on the next agenda, to have that process put into place so that we could get it started. So,
Madam Chair?
yes.
Can I make a motion to, for this board to go out for a permanent CRA director? With this motion, it also carries a process by which we will set up evaluation criteria for that particular position. But the motion is to move forward with going out for a permanent CRA director.
Now, with your motion, we're telling who to go out for it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
for a second. Do we,
Hold on.
do we
You
have-
had wanted to
do we have
clarify
a
something?
second?
Yeah.
Because I want to add the same question in the discussion, but if we don't have a second, then we can continue.
Do we have a second for that item? We'll come to the discussion in a minute. Do we have a second for what she just stated? Do we have a second? That's for lack of a second. All right, Mr. Lawson?
So, Madam Chair, that was my question. I want us to, and that was kind of the reason that I believe Councilwoman Lanier stated she'd like to have a workshop as to what does this look like? What steps do we take to fill this position? Are we going to go through our HR? Are we going to go through a national company? How do we fill this position? Because if we just go out for the position, what steps do we take to do that? So that's why I couldn't vote to second that, because I don't know what we'd be doing with actually hiring someone. So
And-
that's part of the discussion I
Okay,
want to have.
Madam Chair.
Hold on a minute.
That's part of the discussion I want to have tonight. If we're going out for this position, do we go through our local HR? Do we go through a national search? What steps would we take? And I wanted to see if Mr. Haygood could give us some feedback on that as well.
Mr. Haygood, are you able to answer any of those questions?
Madam Chair?
Hold on 1 minute, Ms. Lanier.
I'm sorry, could you repeat them? I didn't hear them very clearly.
Madam Chair, can we get somebody to do something with those doors? I'm hearing a vacuum cleaner.
Mr. Andre, can you ask him, or just go ahead and close the door?
Mr. Haygood,
Commissioner Lawson, would you repeat your question?
my question for you, Mr. Haygood, is for going out for this position, the options that we would have would be going through our local HR or bringing in a national company or going through our legal department to actually advertise for this position, correct?
Well, you could advertise it. You don't have to go with a search committee, with a search firm. They post the, you have the Florida Florida Redevelopment Agency who will post it. So there are some, you can post in some different journals also. Of course, you'd have to develop the request or the advertisement. And I'm sure we could, looking at some other CRAs, generate a document for you to review and approve.
Madam Chair?
Madam Chair?
Follow up,
Hold
Madam
on,
Chair.
hold on. Mr. Lawson still has the floor.
And then also the next would be the time frame, because I believe that West Palm Beach has hired a permanent CRA director, and they went through their local department. They went through their local HR, and they took literally 4 weeks from discussion to actually hiring their CRA. So I'd want us to set a time frame to advertising, to getting this position advertised, and then allowing for applicants to apply if we're going to go out for an application process. So if it's going to be national, if we're going to go through FRA or through our local HR, I want us to have that discussion.
All right, Lanier and then Botel.
I think that we need to have our HR department.
Botel, hold on,
when we-
Botel. Hold on, it said Lanier and then Botel.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'd like to restate my motion. I want a motion to move forward with workshopping this process, for seeking a permanent CRA director and attorney. And I also want the motion to include, to outline this process in a workshop, and also that the workshop should include staffing models.
Ms. Lanier, because of it being a special meeting, it only advertised regarding the executive director, so that's the only position that we can talk about tonight.
Okay, well, then I'll amend my motion to just include the executive director. The motion states again to move forward with workshopping a process for seeking a permanent director for CRA, and the workshop should also be, it should also include staffing models.
All right, is there a second?
I second, with the caveat that our HR department is there for advice.
I agree.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any questions, any comments?
Yes. So she's asking us to set a meeting to come back and talk about.
You want a workshop, correct, Ms. Lanier?
I want a workshop for us to discuss these items.
So
We need to be able to tonight. In the interest of time and in the interest of how we're actually even meeting at this point, that there is no way that we can get into the weeds with this in terms of how we need to go about finding a CRA director. I want us to workshop this so that we can be able to have HR on board, we can be able to have legal on board, so that we can be able to figure out how we're going to find our next CRA director. He might even be just right there in the room right now. We don't know. All we do know is that we want to get a permanent person in place to be able to move forward with all of our projects.
Okay, so for the workshop meeting, you would like to have HR, legal, and a number of others present at that workshop so that we can discuss all of the options that we would have to go out for that position.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And by the way, commissioners, I'm pretty sure that we did a search when the last permanent director was hired. So we do have some guidelines, and I think that was a national search.
Okay. All right, so that information would be helpful to have. And when are you trying to do this? Is there a date you want to have this done by? And when you say date, and we know we don't know when even know when the next meeting is going to be.
I think it is contingent upon us being able to have teleworking in place so that even if we're not in a physical location, we will be in a position to where we have video, we have audio, everything is set up so that it can be just like a conference or just like a meeting that we would attend to in person. But tonight, that's not the case.
No, and it wasn't meant to be like that tonight. It was not. And no, tonight was not set up that way. We already knew, all of us already knew, that the city side was working on a way to make sure that these presentations and people are visible and the public can comment and be involved as well. So we knew that was not happening tonight. So,
so I would say that the next meeting, the date is contingent upon having those things set up for us to have a real meeting, in a setting that, a workshop doesn't have public comment, so to speak, but they also should be involved. But I say that, it has to be set up in such a way that it's not like this.
right, no, it shouldn't have been this way tonight. But what I'm asking though is whenever we have that meeting, are we looking to have it done within 30 days, 60 days? Do you have some sort of idea once we have that meeting to,
Based on the trajectory of the way things are going in terms of the federal government and in terms of this virus, I say within the next 45 days.
from the meeting date, from the workshop
Yes.
date? All right. Someone have any, Mr. McCoy or Lawson, or Botel, did you have any questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, McCoy.
Yes,
You need a second on that motion.
We got a second, didn't we?
Oh, okay.
We had one.
okay, so I support what Councilwoman Lanier is suggesting. However, I don't know if I agree that we should allow for the HR department to do this, simply because I was looking back and I was trying to locate the meeting, but this is already going back until 2012 now, but there was a search firm that attracted and recruited the CRA director that was hired during that time. However, I don't think that we should allow this to go, because now you have a situation of, just like you're talking about this workshop, who are we directing to organize this? Are we directing the interim director, Scott Evans, to do this? Because it kind of seems like we're asking him to, put forth this initiative.
Hold on.
We're going to ask him to put forth this initiative and setting up a workshop to come back and fill the position that he's in by going to the city and having them to come up with, I guess, the process in doing it. I was hoping that the discussion was going to lend to some independence in the process of us using a search firm, which is common in hiring these positions, as opposed to, invoking the city side, which, I think we're just getting someone there in that position. The other part of the concerns that I had was, when you set a specific time, we don't even know when we'll be back here again. So I don't know if it's going to be prudent for us to set a time frame when, in 2 weeks it'll be something else. I wanted to see if we can, if we can retain a search firm and have the discussion, as opposed to, setting another meeting to have a meeting to talk about what needs to happen. And I'm glad Mr. Haygood spoke to that there is some framework that existed before, and perhaps we can use that, as far as going forward. But that is what I would like to see, so that there is some impairment, there's not any impairment in this process, and we can kind of select using a search firm similar to how we've attracted our city manager.
So being that there was a motion and a second, are you all in favor of amending your motion so that
No.
it is the national?
No.
No? Okay. All right. any other comments? So the motion that you put forth was to go out, to have the workshop so that we have HR and all of them present.
We want to have HR and legal present. We want to have staffing models. And the reason why I say that, Madam Chair, is no offense to Mr. McCoy. The issue is that, with search firms, it's going to just take so long. What we want to do is just get an idea at this point of how we need to move forward. We're not saying that we're going to go out tomorrow and hire somebody for that position. We're saying that we need to be prepared to even be able to make that decision. So what we have, the motion on the floor is to move forward with the workshop, to bring in HR. We have an HR department, to bring in HR, to bring in our legal team, and to say, what is the best way to move forward with this decision?
All right, Mr. McCoy?
Can you ask her to expand on what she means by staffing models? Because maybe I'm not understanding, but I need a little more understanding of what that means. Because I'm looking at something online, and I want to make sure that we're clear on.
It means just what it says, Mr. McCoy. It means that we're looking at how the CRA is staffed currently, and what are some models of staffing.
So that's not even relevant to the.
Across CRAs across the country, how we are staffed now, and how other CRAs are staffed. So it gives us an idea of what we're looking for in terms of not just a director, but as for a CRA.
Well, I don't think that's germane to the item.
I think it's germane to having a person who is going to run that department.
I think they probably need to be two separate things, to identify the executive director, and then from there move that process along. I don't see tying those together right now. Yes,
Madam Chair.
Botel.
I think the motion, the sense of the motion was that we have a workshop. I mean, whether we discuss at the workshop staffing patterns or how to hire a director, I think the point of Councilwoman Lanier's motion was that we have a workshop.
Okay, well, let her be clear on what she wants to make the motion on, because I'm glad we asked the question, because clearly that wouldn't be something that would be legal.
Madam Chair, we're going to restate the motion that we're going to move forward with a workshop for the permanent CRA director position and hiring for that position. Everything else in terms of whatever else we discuss is all encompassed in that particular discussion. But for purposes of a motion, it is for the CRA director, that position, and making it permanent.
All right. We're ready for a vote?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. Go ahead, Mr.
Follow-up
Lawson.
question. What date are we going to have this workshop, and who are we asking to attend this workshop?
We put the workshop contingent on getting all of the media equipment together so that we can have a meeting. If we cannot have a meeting in person, then we need to be able to have a meeting not like this one, so that we can, either see each other or have something where we can hear each other. So I said 45 days out, but whichever comes sooner.
You just want to have this on, you basically, whenever we're able to have another meeting, we'll just make
Yes.
that be our next meeting, the workshop.
Yes, whenever we're able to have another meeting that and as I say again, that's unlike this, then we can proceed to a workshop to have this discussion.
Okay.
Madam Chair, unlike this, I'm confused as to what that means. Ms. Lanier.
Sorry?
I'm confused as what do you mean by unlike this, Councilwoman Lanier?
I didn't hear
She's
you.
talking about the way this meeting is going now, where we have people on the
Oh,
phone,
yeah,
we
it's
can't
because
really
I
hear, we're
couldn't-
talking
I
over
couldn't
each other
hear-
like
I
now.
couldn't hear in the beginning. They had to change numbers.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
There
understand.
was no way to check in.
Right, we got you,
Okay,
Lanier, we got you.
We understand. So
Okay.
I guess my follow-up to that then would be, are we going to be looking to do a Zoom meeting? Are we going to do a video
Well,
meeting?
okay, so, hold on, Ms. Lanier. The meeting procedures that we're trying to work out, the city is, I think the CRA is taking the lead from the city. So whenever they figure out how they're gonna do it so that we're covered by sunshine, we can hear everybody, the public can participate, we will follow suit with the city side. So we don't know that right now, okay? And because we don't know that, we can't give a specific date as to when we are going to meet. We just can't right now because of the fact that we don't know how we're going to do that. So for the sake of this conversation, we can just say when we have our next meeting, whether it's the second Wednesday of April or the fourth Wednesday of April or the second Wednesday of May, if we want it to be the very next time we have a meeting, we already know we're not having any kind of meetings until we can either be in here all together or we're going to do it the way that is going to work, which is being led by the city.
Okay.
So,
And then, I guess a follow-up, since we're going to be waiting on that time frame, who are we asking to come to this workshop?
okay, Lanier, you said the HR, right? And legal?
I said HR and legal, so that, they're not going to be, not so much a part of the discussion as a part of support for the workshop in case we have questions.
Right.
So,
Hold on, Lawson?
Uh,
That's it?
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
No, I was saying, are you done?
Yeah, I'll reserve the remaining
Okay.
comments.
Mr. McCoy?
so follow up to Commissioner Lawson. So are we meeting and what is the agenda going to be? I mean, help me understand, are we going to the meeting to ask the questions or is somebody going to be establishing the process or laying out a layout of what's to be discussed? Who's that responsibility on, Councilwoman Lanier?
The responsibility.
I will take the lead and talk with
Thank you,
HR and try to develop an agenda and clear it with the chair.
Are you,
He said he's going to take the lead and do what?
and get the information and set it up and then talk with the chair?
About the
Develop the
agenda
agenda.
itself.
About what?
About the agenda itself.
Okay, McCoy?
I'm not even sure. Members, I certainly support what it is that you want to do. I don't want to get into the meeting to ask a bunch of questions that we're now here and we have the ability to sort out. So if
I
there's
don't
something
think-
specific that we're looking for HR to come into the meeting with, then I would kind of say then we need to make sure that that's clear to send Mr. Haygood off with some direction. In the alternative, if we don't have anything, then I would certainly like to see what the city's process or what Mr. Haygood alluded to with the headhunter firm or search firm, what their process is. But just to have a meeting to start talking and asking questions would then lead us to having to have another meeting.
I think that all of that can happen during that meeting. Mr. Haygood could bring the information about the headhunter, and then also if Ms. Lanier needs to ask questions about what's the best way to do it from HR, or need to ask what's the best way to do it from Mr. Haygood, that would be the questions. I think we need to have all of those options. National information regarding a national search, and Mr. Haygood can get that from the city side or from HR to find out which is the best route to go for that. But having all of those options available when we meet, so when we do have the meeting, we could either decide to go out as a national search or decide to go some other route. But from my perspective on it, I think that we do need to just do a national search. That is very simple and easy. We can cast a net, and it takes it out of our hands.
Well-
It's very simple to do it that way.
Madam Chair, this is
Madam Chair.
Hold on, McCoy,
This
and
is
then
why we
Lanier.
have to have this discussion, because what you're saying is not what they said. They incorporated to have HR handle the process. That's not a national search.
We're not, no,
I took part of the process.
huh?
I didn't ask them to handle the process.
I didn't take it that way either.
So,
She wanted feedback.
She wants
have
feedback
a
from
motion on the
them
floor.
on what is the best way to go.
okay.
So a decision would be made, well, if it's a workshop, we can't make a decision, but we could have it, we can have the information given to us and then have it on the next agenda to go whichever route we're gonna.
Madam
Choose to
Chair,
go.
I was going to ask if we can ask Councilwoman Lanier to amend her motion to not make it the next workshop, to make it the next CRA meeting, so that we can actually make it a voting right to do something.
I can't
moving
hear that, I'm sorry.
He wants to see if she would,
And Madam Chair, go ahead.
he wants to know if you would amend your motion to make it the next CRA meeting versus a workshop. And even if we have it as a meeting, remember, we don't have to have a large agenda. We can have it where we're still able to get the
Well,
information and make a vote.
The only way I would have it as the next CRA meeting is if it's the only thing on the agenda, besides consent.
So what we can do too is we can have it as a workshop, and then we can roll right into a a CRA meeting, so that we're able to make a decision right after the workshop.
Right. We can do that.
Okay, so we're doing the motion you made the motion to do the workshop, and then from there, someone needs to make a motion. We'll vote on that situation here with the workshop, and then we'll come back, and then we'll make the meeting be for the same day or right immediately after the workshop.
Okay.
Are you all okay with that?
I am.
Mr. McQueen?
Right.
Yes.
All right. All right, so we're going to go ahead and vote on the issue about making this a workshop, including what we all discussed and what she said in her motion. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Botel,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, can someone entertain a motion to have a CRA meeting immediately after the workshop regarding the search options or the filling of the executive director position?
So moved.
It'll be immediately after. Obviously, we don't have the date yet, but it will be immediately after.
Second.
All right.
Moved.
Any questions or comments? Madam
Now,
Clerk? Yes.
we're just not, let's be clear, so we're not setting a meeting specially for that topic, but that item is gonna be included on the agenda.
On the agenda,
It
right?
will be on the
Okay,
agenda.
okay, good, I'm glad I asked that question.
Yeah, it's not a special meeting. All right. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Botel,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Do we have any public comments?
I have 3 public comments.
All right, go ahead with the public comments. Public comments should be restricted to issues, matters, or topics pertinent to the Riviera Beach CRA. Please be reminded that the CRA Board of Commissioners has adopted rules of decorum governing public conduct during official meetings, which has been posted at the entrance of the council chambers. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the commission chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, and/or building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. All right?
The first public comment is from Horace Towns. During a state of emergency and with public input limited, we should not have any meetings with possible controversial agenda items, decisions, or votes transpiring during this time. I am disappointed to see a CRA meeting take place with the pandemic impacting the public.
All right.
The next public comment is from Rob Calloway. The CRA would be wise to hire Mr. Scott Evans, as he has been an excellent leader and asset to the Riviera Beach community since he was appointed as your interim director. And the final public comment is from Ms. Bram. In the last CRA director position, we did use a search firm.
All right. All right. A report from the executive director.
I have nothing at this time.
Report of the general counsel.
I have nothing at this time.
All right, discussion of the board. We'll start with Botel and then Lanier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a call with the Palm Beach County League of Cities today. I think Commissioner McCoy was on it as well, where the slate for the 2021 officers and board was put forth. The actual vote on that slate will happen at the next meeting. Kimberly Glass Castro is president. Andy Amoroso is VP. First VP, Mayor Gordon from Haverhill is second VP. I won't read the whole thing because it's about 20 people, but I was elected as the one of the representatives for Large City. And I'll provide the entire list to Mr. Evans. Oh, well, true. The
Yeah.
other Mr. Evans. That's all I have.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ms. Lanier?
I don't have anything, Madam Chair.
All right, Mayor Felder? Mr. McCoy?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So, Vice Chair Botel and to Mr. Evans, I did have some questions, and I wanted to see if Vice Chair Botel can give me an update on the Phase 2 project. I know our last meeting as a body, we said as the council meeting, and we decided to go with the city's current financial advisor. However, I have some concerns about where we are in the process, and this kind of ties into the executive director search. There are some critical items that I was hoping that we were going to kind of get forward with having a discussion with the developer. And there's always been a discussion about we have to have a financial advisor on first. But my concerns have become more grave now that we see the economy is turning. I would like to see, what can you offer either Vice Chair Botel or Mr. Evans as to what kind of economic position does this put the fate of Phase 2 project when it comes to the developers going to the private market? And I preference that to both you and to Vice Chair Botel, being that, Mr. Evans, I was very afraid that it's always been speculation that the market was going to turn. I don't think nobody imagined it was going to be behind COVID-19, but if it continues to go in this process, then we could potentially be having this same conversation that started back in the 2000s. And just looking at the email that we received, it kind of restates what we've already discussed in the meeting. And my idea for the person that was on the joint work team would actually have interface and contact and be able to bring back to staff on a regular basis, as well as to the commission and to the city council as to where we are in the process and where we're going. But certainly, we don't even have a Phase 2 unless we know where we are with the developer in this whole project, because it's very likely going to impact the city's ability to do any kind of development projects as well as the developer. So, Vice Chair, you have any feedback you can share with us?
Well, I think that the feedback that I provided with you previously gave you a timeline of what has been happening. If you look at it, March 11th, the joint team submitted a draft development agreement and a request to present. The draft development agreement is in the form previously advised as not appropriate. The joint development team looks forward to negotiating with the team. And I think that, I think you and I were both recently at P3 conferences where it was without a doubt made clear to us that before we made one move to any kind of a project the size and magnitude of this one, we needed to have a financial advisor on board. These questions about the economy are ones that PFM can help us take a look at the economy, the state of the economy as it now exists with COVID-19, and answer some of these questions. And I think that's why it was important for us to bring them on board right away and not go out for a process that would require us to do a search for a financial advisor. So as I say, it's only March 25th right now. It's only been a couple of weeks, and many things have been in the way of meetings subsequent to the March 11th presentation. So I'm not quite sure even now, Mr. McCoy, what your questions are. I certainly am not in a position to tell you the future with regard to the financial situation that the country is in, with regard to the economics of it. So I'm not sure what you're asking.
I could provide just a brief update just on what's really happened recently. On the 18th, the council decided to go ahead and move forward with hiring a financial advisor, utilizing a new work order with the existing financial advisor who's already been selected by the city council. So following that, we have already drafted a draft scope of services, and the joint work team will finalize that in the next few days, so that we're moving forward with that quite quickly, since it was just a week ago that we got that direction. And although I can't opine on the economy and what's happening, obviously it's of grave concern. And I think the whole country is affected by what's happening now. And we can make sure that we have PFM advise on that if that's something of concern to you.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Evans, Vice Chair Botel, so let's take PFM out of the question, because what you're suggesting to me is that we have a financial advisor to, I guess, and we talked about this last week, to the scope is going to include possibly negotiations, definitely due diligence. But at the very minimum, at what point does some representative from the CRA, the city, and perhaps even Vice Chair Botel sit down in a meeting with these people? Because it might be fruitless to even do anything with PFM if the market has significantly changed and impacted their ability to even move forward at this point. I mean, there are a number of questions that have to be answered, and I think I will say this to you, Vice Chair Botel, since you asked what are those questions. What is the delay with us sitting down with the development team to at least find out what the elements are? Because we don't even have to discuss anything about due diligence. We don't even need to go to the point of even hiring a firm until we know what elements have to be resolved. And I think at the very minimum, that has to be priority, because if status quo has changed for these developers, then, you know, that really impacts our whole ability. So let's not delay this process in saying let's hire a financial advisor if they're no longer a part of, you know, they're not even a part of this game anymore. If this has become something that has decided that it's no longer lucrative for them to be a part of. But that conversation is what I'm expecting. Well, let me not phrase it in that point. That's what I was expecting when we decided that we were going to have a representative to kind of facilitate, you know, where we are and bring back those conversations to the board as to what has to happen next. But certainly a conversation has to happen, and I think that in its current state needs to occur before we engage any further services of a financial advisor, because it could be useless.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Point of order.
I beg to disagree,
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Commissioner
Point of order.
McCoy.
I thought this was
We
council
need to
discussion.
have this community make it very clear to us. Can you hear me?
Hold on, 1 minute. So, Ms. Lanier is saying that because this is council comment, discussion, she is objecting to the long discussion. So, if this is an item that you want to be brought back, or you're looking for information, then we need to have that come, but we can't add a new
We're not,
item.
it's purely discussion of the board. This is the time I would have to talk to another board member.
Right, but it's mainly, a lot of times, to get that information from, is either give direction to the executive director, or just to put a comment out there of something that you want to do, but not to start a new item for discussion. We have never, and especially with this being a special meeting, we are only supposed to be discussing the items that we put on the agenda that was advertised. Now, we can have a short discussion about bringing it back so that we can have a longer discussion, but to have a whole discussion is not what the comment section is for.
Madam
Say
Chair,
a discussion by
Madam
the
Chair.
board.
Go
not-
ahead.
So,
I would just like to add, in the latest update report, it says the pending future actions, the items that we're working on right now. And one of them would be to schedule a new coordination meeting with the APDS and Tezrel team, with the joint work team. So we're proposing to schedule that very soon. We're working on the scope. As soon as that's finalized, we'll meet with APD and Tezrel, because obviously the work that the financial advisor is going to be doing is going to require their cooperation, and we're going to have to lay out a schedule and work together to get all of their materials available for review. So we are proposing to schedule a coordination meeting with them in the very near future.
Okay. Mr. McCoy?
okay.
All right. Mr. Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to commend all my colleagues for coming out and actually taking time to do this meeting. Aside from what was said during one of the public comments, that I think it's still necessary for us to move forward. And the fact that we found a way to get this done tonight, even though it was a little longer than we expected, we can continue to press forward, and that's why we were elected. So thank you to my colleagues, to our staff for coming out tonight, and let's continue to push forward. And it was good discussion, so let's just keep the same energy moving forward.
And I concur, Mr. Lawson. It definitely was a meeting I thought we would be here for a very short, brief time. And I do want to reiterate the setup in which we had tonight is not ideal. I've called in numerous times, and it's only been because I've been sick. And a lot of times I'm not able to have a long discussion because it is not an ideal situation being on a phone in a meeting, especially when it's not set up to make it run smoothly. So although this was not ideal, we were able to get through it. When the city, again, I'm reiterating, when the city is able to set up their system and we're able to have a much smoother process, the CRA will be following behind that, so that we're not having to recreate the wheel. But we do want to encourage public participation, and so through that mechanism, we'll be able to do that if it was not as well played tonight for the public to participate. I do want to just tell everybody to, continue to be safe out there, and wash your hands, do your social distancing, and just use common sense, and just stay safe. With that, we stand adjourned.